Welcome to Let's Talk Marketing. And today we are joined by Stephen Coufal, live from Austin, Texas. Stephen is a growth expert who has navigated a full spectrum of digital scaling, from PR to content, SEO, and products, with years of experience helping software companies build sustainable organic systems. He is here to share with us the stories behind the strategies. So, Stephen, it's great to have you with us, and let's dive in. Can you tell us first more about you?
Yeah, thank you, Thibaut. Gosh, what a generous and nice introduction. It's so nice to talk with you again. I've respected you and your thought leadership and your strategy and business acumen for so many years. So I'm really excited to talk in this capacity. It's really cool. Uh,
Likewise.
yeah, I mean, you kind of overviewed it. So just, I guess, the 30,000-foot view, I really got my start in growth marketing via content, making content for a software system that detected money laundering, and so was doing kind of compliance and money laundering detection, fraud detection for small community banks. So it was a great way to sort of start your career thinking about how do you make content that performs on channels like, we were a small team. So it's like, how do you make a piece of content that can perform on a webinar, that can perform an email, that can work for SEO, do it in a way for a kind of like technical, regulatory audience. It was a great way to sort of start my career. And then, we worked together for a number of years doing, sort of like B2B software generation, reviews, user generated content, at sites like Capterra, GetApp, and Software Advice. And they're sort of the full spectrum. I'm sure we'll dive into it more, sort of how it was and like how a lot of these practices are evolving. But, at that point, link building was what I really got started with: content, SEO, technical SEO. We obviously collaborated on international SEO quite a bit. And then finally, in that role there, moving into kind of a digital product role, which is really exciting. And now I work at a company called retired.com. I'm the VP of growth. It's a really awesome organization that is providing, they're right now exclusively Americans, the opportunity to kind of have different sort of assets that they can include in their retirement accounts and retirement plans. But there, it's a small but growing shop. So it's sort of back to, having to sort of wear a bunch of different hats, which I think will be a fun to talk about here, how we manage that and use tools to do that.
All right, perfect. Thanks a lot for that intro. Good. So when you think about growth, do you see it as as a system, as uh, pieces that are moving together?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you're doing growth right, it kind of becomes an all company sport, right? As everybody's on the team together. I think for growth leaders and marketing leaders, you really need to be thoughtful about what is the strategy and what are the roles that everyone needs to play. But I really think there's a team for everyone. Like, you think about sort of like operational or customer support or sales roles, right? A lot of those can bleed, I think, very seamlessly into what you would think of kind of like your traditional growth marketing role, whether that's, getting ideas for content or campaigns from those sources, but also using often these people as extensions of themselves, right? Like, how can you use your sales team, your CX team to further your objectives and your mission, right? Whatever that might be in the moment. So, yeah, I think more and more it really is kind of like a mindset for companies and teams. And I think as leaders, it's, what is the right strategy? But then I think there's an important piece of like, how do you evangelize and how do you make sure that everybody in the company is kind of understands it and kind of goes, our old coworker Robert Belvin always used to talk about how things like SEO, the kind of like education of it is just, just as important as the execution, right? Making sure that all your stakeholders know, like, why is this important? What are we doing? So yeah, I think it's really kind of something where it's best done when everybody's involved.
So it's like, yeah, it has to be a culture for the company and a mindset for everyone. And so will you say that the companies that are doing it wrong are the ones that are not following this kind of, not implementing that culture across the different teams?
I think it would be something that I would look into. Now, you of course might have a bad strategy, or maybe you execute it poorly. There's probably multiple reasons that you could come into that. But yeah, I think if you see those resistance points where somebody's like, oh, I don't want to do that, it's not my job, it can kind of cause problems. Now, obviously, you want to make sure that you're not asking too much of folks, but yeah, I think it can be easy for companies to kind of have that, like, not my thing, not my deal, which isn't necessarily going to kind of accelerate the growth of the company. Really, if you think about
Mm.
growth as a broad concept, that should be everyone's sort of core responsibility, right? Like, at the end of the day, everybody's
Clearly,
job is to,
yes.
like, sell. Everyone's job is to make the company kind of more profitable, right? And we all take our different lanes in that. So I think as a growth leader, if you can kind of help your executives and your sort of C-suite shift to that mindset, if they're not already there, and a lot of great companies are, I think that's a really important kind of first step.
Okay. And so, do you, I mean, without maybe naming the company, but do you have other projects that went wrong where, I mean, growth was not done in the right way or not considered in the right way? And so, do you have examples or analysis on what happened?
Yeah. I
Mm.
think, when you think about things that don't go well, I'm thinking about some kind of like projects that we had kind of worked on and collaborated, right? I think sometimes uh it's helpful to have, sort of all the options on the table at once. And then kind of like really firmly understand like what is actually the destination that you want to achieve. So I'm thinking about a project that we were sort of tangentially involved on, a site migration that we were working on, not a site, but a sort of an infrastructure behind the site. And I
I
think,
see what you mean.
yeah, one of the pieces that I think about, like, how would have I done this better, right? And so, just for context, we had a website. We wanted to maintain as much of the sort of public facing website. We wanted to maintain as many of the URLs as we could. We wanted to keep this continuity for Google's sake and for users' sake, link redirects, all of that. But the technology, we were on kind of old technology, and so we wanted to modernize a lot of these pieces. I think everybody had their head in the right place, but I think that was a great example of maybe we kind of different people had different perspectives of what should be done, and we kind of just like would sort of rush into a few different paths that then we'd get a little bit down and discover like, oh gosh, this wasn't actually the right thing. This doesn't actually meet those core objectives that we had. So it took, like, I think 2 or 3 sort of false starts to really kind of come back and be like, okay, what is our core objective? Our core objective is to, retain as much traffic as possible. Let's kind of then work backwards in terms of what we actually need to do from a technology perspective, from a product perspective, from a marketing perspective. So yeah, that I think is a good example of where you can have your heart in the right
Right.
place, but
Right.
unless you kind of have those tough conversations and think, what is
Mm.
that core objective? Let's start there and then go back, and not what I think we were doing, which is like, how do we kind of cleverly accomplish this? Maybe we'll sort of fall in love with our own words a little bit, is what got us in trouble in that circumstance.
Right. So you mean probably also not taking to, I mean, yeah, the traffic component and so the Google side of it, as a core objective and starting with that and how to save traffic and to recover it. And so that leads me to my next question, which is the Google now. And
Yeah.
you've been in SEO and I mean all this, yeah, God. And
Yeah.
so, how obsessed are you by Google and by the frequency of the updates and what comes? I mean, the surprises that they are giving us every weeks or months. No,
My wife always jokes. She was like, "You have like a relationship of like a ex-religious person with God with Google. You're like a disenfranchised Catholic or something with how you
right?
with how you talk about Google now. It's like it's some sort of God that you're frustrated with." Um, I would say, I think somebody that we worked with as a consultant, Glenn Gabe, who's a really great SEO consultant. I think he, in the later years of working with him, I think helped shift my perspective on this. I feel like early it was, you kind of stay like razor glued to it, and obviously it's important for every SEO and growth marketer to keep sort of like broadly abreast with what's happening, particularly as there's like specific news and benchmarks around page speed and HTTPS back in the day and mobile first indexing, some of these things from history where you had to have the prep time. But I think one of the pieces that I got from Glenn was it could be kind of easy to get almost like too obsessed with every little update and every little thing that's happening. And we've seen right over the years, right? You and I, we've been at this for a long time now, Tebow, right? Like sometimes the ball kind of shifts in one direction and then it shifts in another, and it's easy to kind of feel like, oh, I invested all this in links and now like links kind of don't matter. They matter differently. Or, I really kind of tried to do this specific content strategy because I thought it would fit. So what I've tried to sort of shift to now is, obviously keep the broad awareness, but how do you kind of try and like look for what the North Star is, right? And I think the North Star really is what you kind of, hopefully will get from users, right? And so obviously you need to kind of think like how the best practice applies. Like users can sometimes not necessarily give you the best insight in every case, but broadly speaking, I think a lot of times if you have a piece of content or a landing page or a website, getting in front of users that are going to be likely customers and saying like, how does this help? What kind of information do you want to see? What kind of content do you want to see? What's the arrangement of that? How much is on one page or on multiple pages? I think as much as possible, if you can kind of start there, if growth marketers can start there, and then obviously build up channels, do it in a way that hopefully is optimized with Google. There's still a lot of like technical and kind of best practices you can implement behind the scenes, but do all those things, but don't get lost in the sauce with like every little update. Think broadly and systemically. How can I create awesome pages, awesome websites, awesome experiences for my users? I think if you start there, it will hopefully help folks get a little less caught up. And the environment is fracturing, right? Like we saw firsthand in our business that Google's not a reliable partner for paid or organic search, right? Even on the paid side, it's increasingly, I think, a frustrating point for a lot of growth marketers. So, and then we see the emergence of things like ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity. More and more people are turning to these other tools to do their searching and looking for information. So yeah, I don't think it's not kind of the mid 2010s anymore. I think you gotta think what's best for you and your users, and then try and kind of build the best practices around it without kind of trying to
Yeah.
chase the ball of Google.
So it's, yeah, delivering and providing value to your customers and to the users first, and then the Google or the LLMs will recognize that and will, yeah, give you some kind of visibility in their tools. Okay, right. Yeah.
I think so. And then like how do you build up your own channels, right? I think it's easier to build up, whether that's an email marketing channel or a social media channel or, whatever other kind of, YouTube, whatever other kind of platform that you're using. If you have, awesome content, awesome experiences that help your users, they're going to want to come back to channels like that. You're not just kind of like broadly harvesting, casting this sort of Google net that will, catch some fish, right? So I think that way you're going to be better prepped for Google and LLMs in the long run. But I think you're also going to be much more likely to have success with kind of that more direct channels, because users will resonate with it. It'll stand out more in a marketplace.
Okay, great. Yeah. So do you have an example that you can share with us of a moment where you realized that a strategy, a growth strategy that you implemented started to work really well?
Yeah. Yeah, I am thinking of kind of sort of towards the end of our time together working on sites like Software Advice was one that I was kind of responsible for. Uh, and it's been interesting. I guess I'll share kind of personal anecdotes. You can cut these or keep them. I'm happy to air my therapy live on the internet. But we were working on a lot of these sites. Like when we started working on them, they were kind of best in breed, kind of like top of the line kind of pieces, and it was really cool to work on those and maintain them for a number of years. But right, the environment kind of at the end of the 2010s and 2020s, our space became a lot more competitive, both in terms of direct competitors, big publishers getting into our space, The SERP pages started to turn, much less friendly towards organic. We were starting to see, the LLMs eating into some of our search traffic. So for a number of years, I was like a little sort of professionally depressed because it felt like it's like you're gonna go. It's like you're gonna go in there. You're the Washington. What's the team that always gets beat by the Globetrotters? You're the team's gonna go in there. You're gonna get your butt kicked by the Globetrotters, but
Mm.
try and just lose by 50 and not lose by 70. And so I think that was like a kind of like a challenging place professionally. But when I kind of moved into this last product role, I felt like I really had like all the kind of keys to maneuver everything directly in my own ability. And I feel like we were starting to really implement kind of like what we were talking about. We were starting to really take this user-centric approach to how we were developing software advice. And I feel like it was really working. It was really kind of like the first time in a couple of years where we started to see some of our traffic numbers, definitely our conversion numbers, some of our position top 3 keywords start to really like turn around. So that was like an extremely gratifying moment, I think. And it really did come back to like, okay, what are the kind of best practices that we see on the SERPs today? And I kind of like to use that as like a starting point. So if you want to rank for a keyword, what are the top 5 sites doing? Okay, cool. This is kind of like your benchmark. This is your floor now for what you need to achieve. And then how do you then use user research or get user feedback often, or it can be kind of internal brainstorms too. But then how do you get information to take that kind of like baseline experience and take it into something that's like a little bit up beyond that, a little special, and get that in a place to Google to rank. So I feel like some of the experiences we were building, targeting types of software, sort of CRM software, some of the experiences that we were building to target people searching for, individual pieces of software like a Salesforce or HubSpot or comparisons of those. I think we're really starting to execute on that and start to see some of those numbers really turn around. Some of the revenue numbers were beating forecasts, which was really exciting. So yeah, I would say that kind of piece right at the end, which was a few months
Okay.
before getting laid off from that role. So it's a good reminder too that just because you're doing a good or bad job doesn't always mean that you're going to succeed at the job.
That's another story.
Yeah, that's a different podcast, I guess.
Right. Yeah. But what you're saying here is that's the product responsibility that you had at that time, combining with SEO expertise, content, and I think all of that as a system, as one strategy that you called lead, made a difference. And so it's not these these little pieces, has to be put together and managed together to really deliver the right strategy. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, based on reading, we're maybe like getting ahead of us a little bit here, but uh yeah, I think in the sort of like modern web world that is like really the case, right? I feel like it used to be when I was first doing this, it's like, okay, cool, we had like a product team and they kind of worried about the conversion flow, and we had an engineering team and they just kind of kept the website alive. And then SEO was, you were, kind of making content below the fold and you were getting links. And like if you did that really well, you could drive a lot of traffic, right? But I don't think it's really like that today. Like you said, it's user experience and kind of product, and then engineering, making sure that the experience is great and fast and efficient, and SEO bringing in their best practices, and content making information that's like valuable to users and search engines. I really think it is kind of everybody in the same boat
Right.
rowing. So I was like fortunate in that role to kind of have done a little bit of everything. And then it's also
Yeah.
kind of funny, I think this might getting in there a little ahead too, but every company kind of structures things differently in terms of like what is the website, like this new role. It's much more like, yeah, marketing content does the website, like, let us know if you
Right.
need anything, but just go nuts. Versus where we were at was much more of an engine, much more of like kind of an organized kind of thing with processes and workflows and everything. So
Yeah.
it'll depend from team to team, but I think kind of having that broad scope of stuff is
Yes.
important.
I think the end-to-end responsibility and the
Yeah,
on the spectrum is super important there. Yeah. And
absolutely.
we've seen that, yes. We've experimented different organizations and the ways of working. Some did very well, others less. But yeah, So
Yes,
that's super
absolutely.
interesting to hear from you on that. So when we also, of course, consider these, growth marketing, and we also think about tools and the stack of the tools that are important to to understand what we are doing, to monitor and to test and so on. And I like to hear more from you on that, on the tools that really changed the way you worked, and the one that delivered additional value, and that had a disproportionate impact on your performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I'll be honest. I feel like the big accelerator for me right now is Claude, and using Claude in conjunction with a lot of SEO tools. So that's where I
Right.
think some of the magic has been. I think the LLMs are extremely powerful, but if you can supplement them with your own data and insights from these other tools, I think that's where it can get really, really exciting. So
Can you give us an example of how you're using
yeah.
that?
Yeah. So like I can kind of like walk through maybe the content workflow that we're working with now. So, we have a lot of information about our website kind of loaded into Claude. So it knows about our brand, and there's kind of a series of brands that we work on under the retired banner, all dealing with kind of different types of retirement and assets that you can invest in. But so we're competing with sites in the financial space. I guess I'll walk through two examples. One, we're working on a website redesign right now. So we have kind of gone through and mapped, okay, what are the major page types that we want to really develop and implement on these websites. And so what I've done is, okay, we think we need like a product page. This is an example, right? We sell products, we think we need a product page, right? You could have a blog article page. It's like, okay, we want to be like really comprehensive. So what's a way that we can kind of do competitive research, but do it at scale? So we know we have these different competitors in the financial space. What I'll do is I'll go and I'll capture screenshots of, say the top 5 results ranking for a term, right? So we might want to rank for a term like self-directed IRA account. That might be a type of a keyword that we want to rank for. So we put that in. What are the top 5 sites that are ranking? You can use the inspect tool. They have a command under inspect. There's plugins like Chrome plugins that'll do this too, but you can capture a full screenshot of the page that you want to look at. So, do that maybe for a couple of different keywords. Now you've got a set of 7 to 12 sites that all have awesome product pages that rank. And so then I'll feed that into Claude and say, hey, I'll give it a prompt. Hey, I'm trying to, create a page, redesign a page. Here's a bunch of my competitors. Can you kind of provide an inventory of the components that these pages have, and how often they appear across these different competitors? And so this is something that previously I would have just done manually, right? I would have kind of opened up the page and like,
Right.
okay, this site has a header, Fidelity has a header, cool, okay. This is like a pull quotes, NerdWallet has a pull quote, okay, cool. But now it's like all you got to do is capture those screenshots, dump that in there, then you get a menu, and then you can kind of say, okay, there's 30 different possible components. 6 of these, every single site has, okay, those are probably like table stakes. And then what are the like unique ones there within? So you're not just like loading it up into the AI, say, go nuts, like make these decisions for me, but you can like really automate and scale like the back end research to just get that, maybe it would have taken a day to do that project before. Like now you can do it in a couple hours, and have a lot more time to do other thing. The other kind of workflow, I guess, that I'll sort of like mention is you can supplement all these different things into Claude. So kind of, I'll say we're trying to rank for a keyword, for a blog, right? We're going to create some new blog content. But what we'll do there is a kind of a similar sort of step, right? So I'll build a content brief. I'll say, hey, here's the top 5 sites that are ranking. I'll include screenshots in there. I'll also copy and paste the AI results for the keyword. So it's like if Google on the SERP is providing AI result, I'll put that in there. I'll put the target keyword in there. Uh, I'll do a little SEM rush research on that keyword. So like, what are the primary keywords, the secondary keywords that we want to rank for? Any SERP features, so people also ask. And then I have kind of a long prompts I can share if people are interested, but I'll sort of say, hey, here's all this background research. Can you kind of build me an outline for this content? Like, what makes it different? How do I set myself apart? you could start there, and then you can even have it kind of like fill in gaps as you go. And then the other piece that we'll do is we'll then kind of go and you can load in Ahrefs data as well to say, here's relevant backlinks related to this topic. Can you cite these sources? And then the final piece that we do to make it special, we're really lucky. We have, one guy in particular, it's done a bunch of video interviews and it's like a real thought leader. And so the other piece that we'll do is like, okay, cool. We have this like great, kind of like B plus, style content, right? It's still like largely algorithmically driven and generated. You go through and sort of edit it, but we can load up YouTube transcripts that he's done all these interviews, hours and hours of interviews. We can put that in Claude and say like, okay, cool. Can you sort of like vet this against this, and then find places to actually insert quotes from our kind of internal thought leadership sort of throughout this content, as well as like internal links. And so that way you're getting something that's like really, really powerful. It's unique, it's specialized for you. I'll then take that back into SEMrush and then they have kind of a sort of like a tool creator where we can go through it and kind of find like what are sort of like complex sentences you might simplify, what are like wordy things. So that's kind of my final step, is to put it in there and do like kind of my editing, check for originality, if you could see that. But that's kind of my workflow. So it's like you kind of get these data sources from SEMrush and Ahrefs, kind of load that into Claude, Google search competitives, load that into Claude, help that get your outline, even like rough drafts of your content. Figure out what are those like special sauce, the special touch that you can provide, because I think that in of itself is fine, but probably isn't going to get you, into ranking, right? It's not unique or special, but if you might have other resources, other thought leadership out there that your company has gathered that you can kind of easily plug into to make it that, repurpose that content, and then go from there. So yeah, that's been like a couple of kind of like specific use cases there, but I've found the combination of like SEO tools for data and like Claude for like analysis, rough drafts, getting things started, how do you do the 70-80% of the task, has been extremely, extremely powerful for me, I think.
That's great. Yeah. And do you also use Cloud or are connected to other tools maybe to track the performance?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're experimenting right now is there's a data connector called Windsor. So it's a tool that there's a bunch of these, but it's like a tool that you can kind of connect all of your, your Google Analytics, your AdWords, your Search Console, more of those kind of data sources. I don't believe they have connectors into like SEO tools right now, but your analytics and your Search Console. And then that can then be one of the plugins to Claude, and then you can essentially have Claude like in real time access these tools and build dashboards and reports and provide recommendations, which is like really, really powerful as well. If folks don't have that, and I found for even just quick wins, like you can also just dump a big Excel file into
Yeah.
Claude and ask it to build you, kind of like an interactive graph, like an HTML driven graph or charts. I was doing a big backlink audit and analysis, and so that was something that I just dumped a bunch of a bunch of Excel data into Claude, and then was asking it to build me visuals and compare against these different sites and compare for different factors. So yeah, stuff like that I think is extremely powerful. Like in the past, you'd have been kind of having to do a bunch of different pulls in the tool and kind of copy
Right.
pasting or a lot of Excel work, and it's like now you can kind of offload a lot of that thinking straight to
Can
the
you
straight.
name that tool again?
Yeah, Windsor AI. I think it's Windsor AI. I think it's Windsor
Right.
AI. IO.
All
I
right.
think it's Windsor
Okay.
AI.
We'll share that in the notes, yeah, in the comments
Yeah.
for the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
audience. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
That's great.
Great.
Yeah.
This one.
And for the so UX, let's say the UX analytics now, or are you looking at a solution that can help understand the experience, the user journey, or the buyer journey on your site?
Yeah. Yeah, we have that on this new company. I haven't used it as much. I think previously at the last role when I was in digital product, we were using it a little more.
Yeah, full story with, yeah.
Full story, yeah. So that one was the one that I was looking at more, and I found that to be pretty helpful too. I think we'll get there, and we have tools for that retirement. We'll get there. I think there's some more foundational stuff that we're working on right now. So some of that, so we got to build that up to a place first, which we're on a good path for, I think. But Full Story was I think a super helpful tool, both in terms of being able to see kind of heat maps, click maps, but then also just watching individual journeys. I always think was super helpful. Like you get a little of this in like the user testing when you're asking people to kind of walk through the site, which I think is helpful too. But it's always nice when they don't know, somebody doesn't know you're over your shoulder, and you can kind of just like observe, like, where are you clicking? What are you doing? Like,
Mm,
I'm surprised you're clicking on that. Like, why, why are you
right.
doing that? So yeah, I think that's helpful. I haven't,
Mm,
that'd be an interesting place to, potentially use AI as well to kind of automate some of that. That's something I haven't done. I'd be curious if there's other folks you've interviewed that have done that. That'd be really interesting.
okay, nice. Yeah. And one more also use case, which is which has been, I mean, which is probably still a struggle for SEO experts, is to understand how we rank on the LLMs, on these no engines. So how do you track that in the, and do you have a specific also set of no tools or agents to review that?
Yeah. I'm using SEMrush for that too. They have a decent tool that provides like how many citations you're appearing for. I suspect the like data availability of it is probably the biggest knock against it, but it's like a pretty good pretty cool tool set, at least for your sort of basic needs. Like what are the citations you're appearing in? They group them kind of topically. So like here's your retirement advice topic in our case, right? And then be like, okay, here's a bunch of different queries that have some commonality. They're kind of like rolling up into queries. Here's the ones you're appearing for. Here's the ones you're not appearing for. And then they do a good job of actually showing in that tool like what are the sites that are getting cited for these types of things. So between the job that I was at and this current one, I was doing some freelancing, and so it was for kind of like a local med spa here in Austin. So kind of like in that local business. I hadn't done that for a long time, but they, of course, were interested, and they rank pretty well for core terms. They rank pretty well, but they were really like, how do we get more AI search was something that they were interested in. And so I was using the SEMrush tool, and what was really interesting in some of the citations that they were showing, two things. One, I initially told them, I was like, yeah, I don't think you guys really need to bother with like LinkedIn. I don't think that's really like a big
Yeah.
channel for you. But I was seeing some competitors with like a LinkedIn page that was publishing content, not a lot of content or even very recent, but it was just kind of filling these like unique content gaps in the AI results. And so this competitor's LinkedIn posts were getting pulled and added as like citations
Wow.
in these pieces. And then SEMrush also uncovered, this will again depend on the business, but discovered some like profiles for this, the doctor that ran this med spa that, hadn't been filled out, or were maybe he had filled out like 10, 15 years ago that were now really outdated. So if people were trying to kind of like search for more information about him or his practice, uh, you were getting this like outdated old information from these profiles that SEMrush was citing. So it's like, okay, cool. This is like very tangible stuff. Like we know that there's these queries out here that are getting put into. I think they primarily just have Chat and Gemini and Google. I don't think they have other engines. I think it's just those three right now. But in those places, like, hey, here's citations that are getting picked up, sites that are getting picked up and pulled into the results for AI search that you have old or no content for. Like, it'd
Great.
take an hour to go through and like fill these out and update them, and get the right address and contact there, and like just doing that is going to strengthen your online presence and the results that you're pulling in for Google. So yeah, I've enjoyed SEMrush. I think it's, probably, I know there's more kind of dedicated tools for it, but I think at least kind of getting a lot of folks started, I think it's pretty helpful.
All right. And do you have also a reliable way to track the click-through rate from AI reviews or other LLMs to your content, to your
I don't.
sites?
I don't. I'd be curious if you do. So if one of these interviews somebody has a good idea, please send it to me. It still feels a little. It still feels a little bit like a wish and a prayer, I think, with stuff. But I think what I've seen, I think it was G2, I think, had published this, where There are less clicks that are coming through from the AI results, but the clicks that they get, because you can see like referral clicks in Google Analytics, those clicks tend to qualify and convert at a very,
Higher.
very high rate. Yeah. So I think that is going to be just a little bit more of the game in general for SEOs. I think getting those like click-through rates will be tough, but knowing, particularly for queries that are important for your commercial, keywords, right? What are the keywords that really make you money? Like, are you appearing in those? What is the referral traffic that's coming in, whether you're measuring from Google Analytics or a different tool? And kind of like monitoring those, because I do believe that. I think that's going to be the game. It's going to be less volume and more like, hey, the days of like huge traffic might be kind of disappearing, but like people are still going to be searching online, and particularly when people are going to be spending money and big money, I think people still want to go to sites. They still want to, you know,
Hmm.
do their commerce on sites with partners there, right? And definitely for bigger things, any sort of like B2B purchase, people aren't just going to be buying that straight from the LLM. Like maybe that'll happen,
Yeah.
for commercial or consumer goods, but so it's like might be less clicks than there used to be, but I think there's still value out there for growth marketers. It's just going to be a little bit of a calibration to this new world.
Okay. All right. So just to summarize on these, let's say that part on tools and the stack. So you're still using I would say the traditional tools that you had before AI, but you're using AI or cloud in particular to make them better now, and to link and to connect and to get more from these tools. Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what is also helping, like when we were doing some AI content generation before, and when I kind of compare that versus what I've been doing with this sort of like SEMrush powered and SERP analysis powered results, I think you're just making a deeper, much more comprehensive document, as well as, finding what are gaps, right? What are topical things related that these top sites aren't covering. So it's like not only are you kind of able to do something that's comprehensive compared to competitors, but you're able to like already get those niches in there. But I think that's the advantage of doing both is you get deeper insights from the tool versus if you just go to the tool and say, hey, make me a blog post about what the best CRM software is. I think you're going to get something much more generic, but the more that you can kind of feed it, the better the output I think will be on the back end. So yeah, that's still kind of my big perspective is I think together is what they're gonna really be
Great.
powerful with.
Okay. Good. All right, so let's now look at different growth stories that you might have experienced in B2B and now. So we can look at your experience, but also what you've seen outside. What's the one that you would have loved to work on or to experience? And but yeah, so if you can start by your own, so the one that you're most proud of, the best thing that you've ever implemented in growth.
Yeah, gosh, that's so many amazing options for me. Cool things that I've done.
I'm sure.
Fake modicum of fake modesty here. I mean, I think a couple things sort of jump to mind. So maybe I'll share kind of two quick examples. One, I think was the project that we, collaborated on early in your tenure at Gartner, which was just this big expansion of all of these CCTLD sites, right? I think taking this set of three brands, Capterra, Software Advice, and GetApp, and then like scaling them across the world. I think we had 70 CCTLDs. I don't even know, dozens and dozens of different countries that we were in with localized content, localized reviews, local language reviews, trans creation, right? As we were really kind of not just working to just sort of throw up another language on there, but making it really good and relevant for those in particular users, I think was something that was really cool. I know it was like a project that we worked on, so maybe that's why it like pops to mind. But
Yeah.
seeing that and kind of building it up from nothing, and obviously a lot of that was under your leadership, which was really cool. But building that from nothing to then being one of the main traffic drivers for our business and revenue drivers for our business for years and years and years, I think was really cool. And I think was encouraging for me not to just, be kind of like stuck in a box, right? To think wider, think bigger around there's opportunity out there everywhere you go, right? Across the world, the globe, people are, coming online and, surprising the different countries that can kind of like drive a lot of traffic and revenue for you. So that was one. And then I would say second, kind of like early in my tenure there, I think we did a really good and clever job building out link building engines, right? Which I think is still something that's like really important. And in the world of kind of like more volume has gotten harder somehow, is like, how do you really build a name and a brand for yourself? Um, I think there is still power in links. I think there's power in brand. I think there's especially power for that in AI. I think if in this AI world, I think if anything, it's actually more impactful. And so, anyways, I just think we did an awesome job of being on that team and then and leading that team of how do we go and create data that is really compelling for the industry, right? How do we create insights that people really want to talk about and share about? And in doing that, we kind of built a name for ourselves in these markets, as well as earning a lot of links. And so that would be like a couple of ideas that I think really kind of like spring to mind in terms of something that I was like really proud to participate on here.
Okay, great. Yeah. And on the, let's say on the other side, I mean, any projects that are, no, well, where failed, but I mean, good learnings for you and for the organization you were working at that time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't been in my new job long enough to fail, so I'll I'll bucket
Okay.
that one. I mean, I would say, I think one thing that we got wrong at the company that we work together is I think we got a little, I talked about the like value of user feedback. I think at different times we got almost like too myopically focused on some of the feedback, which then led us into like a little bit of a place of being stuck, right? Like we had kind of a sort of experience that worked for a long, long time, and it was super productive for SEO and for conversion rate. And I think we all knew like, okay, we need to sort of shift and evolve this experience, but like, what exactly does it look like? And we knew we wanted to have like a user generated kind of path for that, right? We wanted the users to kind of help us inform the direction that we go. But I think we like in retrospect got like too focused on, it's showing them our experience or like a sort of plus version of our experience. I think we were maybe like a little too narrowly focused on just people that wanted to just buy right then and not sort of the full spectrum of like, there are people that want to buy. How do you create them a path? And there also might be people that want to, educate themselves a little bit. And how do you kind of create a path for them on your same experience where we're not just trying to like kind of force a purchase decision on them right away? So that'd be an experience that I would share, and I think the lesson that I learned from it is like, as much as I've been advocating the user feedback, I think it is really impactful, important, but you have to kind of make sure that you're not, either getting the answers that you want to get or are kind
Right.
of, being like too narrowly focused on one subset of users, or even thinking about, like the old Steve Jobs analogy, nobody wanted a touchscreen until they had a touchscreen in their hand, right? And then everybody, ditched their BlackBerry, right? So it's like sometimes you can't iterate your way out of there. Sometimes you have to kind of show somebody, hey, here's a wild new experience. Um, which is another area where I think AI is really helpful, right? Like one tool that we didn't talk about that I guess I'll circle back around and hit real quick, like that we were using kind of at the end there at our time together, Tebow, was there's different ones. I know Figma has a great tool for this. We were using V0 from Vercel, where you can do kind of this like vibe coding for designs. And I think that's another way that you can really kind of accelerate or potentially avoid some of this. Like you don't have to like incrementally improve your way out of these easier. Now it's easier now than ever to be like, hey, here's a totally new experience. You don't need to pull in a bunch of engineering resources or technical help. Pretty much anybody can kind of vibe code themselves, and at least to a mock-up, right? It might not need to be fully functional, but at least into like a mock-up that you can get a user to interact with. So yeah, that's one lesson learned, and one way that I think these new tools can kind of help marketers and growth professionals take kind of bigger swings in their user testing.
Okay. Totally agree with that. Yeah. All right. And then if you look at the broader markets, and I mean, it can be in B2B software or outside, but the growth stories that no, you will have loved to be involved with, or say, okay, too bad I didn't think about this one first.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, one of the at GDM, one of the interesting things that we saw, and I think was really smart, is sites that are, I increasingly, right, some of the competitors we had were big brands like Forbes, right? And so Forbes, people know there's a lot of notoriety, you're going to get more click-through rates. So Forbes started kind of competing in our space, and they had a lot of success because they have a lot of like brand equity. um I think the other area, this might depend on the business you're in, kind of like how broad and how many different types of verticals that you might be in. We were in a bunch of different kind of software categories, right? The other thing, though, is seeing some of these other sites. So I think Black and White Zebra was one of the first that kind of jumped on this, but others are doing it as well now. Where it's like, how do you kind of create more like really focused communities or sites that are targeting users, where you can almost kind of like hack the brand awareness, right? You're not trying to build Forbes, which everybody will know. You're just trying to build notoriety in like a very specific uh pillar, or a very specific like brand of type of person, right? Like you want to be the resource for doctors, right? And you have kind of everything related to being a modern doctor. You can build a site there. So that was one that I think was really clever. And it was like, oh, if we had to kind of go back and do this again, this might be the the approach to take. Instead of having one monster site that kind of does everything, it's like you have sort of a collection that do a bunch. So I think that would be one. I'm trying to think of just other big brands. Being on something with like a big brand campaign would always have been something that would be
Yeah.
fun.
Mm.
But yeah, those are a few, I guess, that kind of popped to mind.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay. So I mean, we are close to the to the hour, so I just want to also wrap up and get your also some insights on how you see the evolution of no, your job, and the evolution of growth of digital world. And so yeah, thinking broadly on that, what's your perspective on what is going to happen?
Yeah. I think, this is sort of the easy cop out. I think these AI tools will continue to become more prevalent. I do think we'll get to some inflection point, though, where there are sort of so many tools and so many systems and processes that are kind of being built out, that I kind of wonder if there'll be some sort of um, like turning point for businesses, right? Where just as like from an IT perspective and governance perspective, it becomes really challenging to manage. If you have a big workforce and they're all doing AI stuff and they all have a variety of tools, and it's just like the output is increasing so exponentially, that like, how do you kind of manage it? So I think we'll continue to see a proliferation. I do wonder if there will be some point in the next few years where there is some sort of consolidation, even if that's just from a kind of like corporate governance perspective, right? Where as the big models get bigger and bigger and bigger and kind of like swallow up a bunch of different functionality, if instead of like, hey, you have 6 different AI tools, it's like you have this tool and this kind of like does everything,
Okay.
and that way it becomes easier for the people to kind of manage it. So I think we'll see that, and then I think we'll continue to see this like stuff like we're doing here, right? This kind of like bespoke, kind of more curated, in-depth, human type of thing. I suspect content like this will increasingly like resonate through, just as there's more and more and more content, like there's just more stuff than there ever has been. Things that hopefully are, genuinely insightful and interesting and engaging, I think will be the type of stuff that people really like gravitate to. So I think we'll start to see more stuff. Eventually it'll get kind of like called back,
Yeah.
but I also think the stuff that like takes the time to be really excellent, will be, continuing to kind of break through. Yeah, it's hard to replicate that at scale.
Right.
So
Mm.
it's kind of a two-pronged game for marketers. It's like, how do you play the volume game where you need to, but then like, where do you put your bets down in terms of like signature content, signature assets, things that you really want to use to kind of like take your organization to the next level. I think marketers are going to balance both.
Well, yeah, this is exactly why we wanted to hear you and get your insights on this experience, because it's yeah, we strongly believe that the voice of subject matter experts is really important, and it can of course live with AI, because we can get a lot from that and extract the juice and make it great. So thanks a lot, Steven. It was a great talk, and I hope you enjoy it as well.
Yeah,
And yeah, and we may do another episode soon with you as well. Yeah.
Yeah, please. This was super fun. So yeah, I'd love to come back and do another chat anytime, Thibaut.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye.